So we're going to kick it off. Again, my name is Ann Gemmel from the Future Works Alliance. I'm the founder of this innovative civic platform to bring together lots of ideas and insights and expertise and focus it into creating a future of work playbook for the region. The first topic that I thought was urgent to tackle was creating a 24-month communications program about future-ready careers. There's a lot of confusion about robots coming to take jobs and what's going to happen in the future to people's livelihoods. And there's not a lot of clear guidance for regular people. And that's the goal. That's the premise of why I thought this topic was a good one to start with. So just to back up a little bit, we have this whole process is called an alignment cycle. So we're on step 4 right now, where we're sharing the data, sharing the conclusions. If you notice, step 1, we identified the shared topic. I did that along with Office of Workforce Development colleagues in 2019, when we were looking at what other countries were doing to make themselves more future resilient as we enter an age of rapid technological change. So these topics, this particular topic has been identified for a long time. And it was really a thrill to kick this off, because it's been something that I wanted to convene a coalition around for a while. So then, using the software that Shelling Point, who happens to be a founding member, Michael Taylor from Shelling Point, is on the call today. If you have questions for him, he'll be able to answer them. But using the software, we started a process of gathering opinions. So the invitation to contribute opinions went out to a couple of hundred people. Some of them knew me from Adam, some of them did not know me at all. Some of them had heard of Future Works Alliance, some of them had not. So I'm really pleased to report that 78 people in total participated in some part of this dialogue, and 45 people were especially engaged in almost every step. There was engagement from a core group of 45. And luckily, which this could have gone either way, but it was fortunate that they happened, those most engaged people were spread across important stakeholder groups. So you see that box on your left: donors, people who work in government, K-12 partners. All of these stakeholders were groups that I identified as a key to the success of any communications program about future-ready careers. We all shared the agreement. We got to step 3. We got to step 2, step 3, step 4. Today, we are here. We're drawing conclusions from the data and sharing the data. Trying to move my slide. Okay, great. So the question that we want to answer today is, how like-minded is this group? We know that everyone who participated in this whole process is interested in the topic, but that's no relation to whether or not they're like-minded. And so the purpose of the process and the purpose of the questions and the opinions and the whole multi-step process is to find out how aligned we are. And so the first 3 steps is just, with no work or no discussion or no, workshops or one-day conferences, we found out very quickly how like-minded the group is. So when you think about like-minded, people can be like-minded and reject opinions. People can be like-minded in their endorsement of opinions. People can be divergent, where there's no agreement or not any like-mindedness. So ideally, at the end of, in a dream world, you're in the top right-hand corner of very, very, very strong alignment around all of the opinions and goals and assumptions and barriers. The whole list goes on. So the good news is that we want to be in that top right-hand corner. And in fact, we're not far at all from that top right-hand corner. This group, after a series, after these steps, the data is clear that this group is like-minded, and it can coordinate its actions and its vision and its mission, as evidenced by this, where we landed as a group. So not all groups do this. Not all topics, just start out in this place. And so the work ahead of us is basically moving our like-mindedness and our alignment from a relatively strong place where it is now to even stronger alignment. And how do we do that? Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So this is the great news, is that, there's a lot of endorsement of the opinions that were expressed, and there's a lot of agreement about the strategic purpose of why we're doing this. So there's agreement that we should be doing something, and there's agreement about the how we should do it. So just a quick review about the science behind coalitions and collaborations that are trying to accomplish things together. You had to start with the assumptions have to be aligned. So this talks a little bit about the sequence and the types of opinions. So out of all step one, we had, hundreds of opinions submitted. All of those opinions fell into 4 broad categories. It was an opinion about the current state of things and other assumptions. It may have been an opinion about why it wouldn't work, what the unintended consequences were, and what our goals should be. So all of the opinions fell into one of these 4 boxes. In addition, the science of the software tells, and the science of the data from hundreds and hundreds of collaborations that Shelling Point has amassed data about, shows us also that there's subcategories of opinions that guide action or inaction. So there's barriers that may prevent people from taking action towards success. So in these subcategories, you have groups of opinions that make the case for action, why we should do this. There's opinions about the means and the process and the value that it would create. There are also lots of opinions about the barriers and unintended consequences, the constraints on success. And then lastly, the goals. What are the North Star? Where should we be going with this? The external and internal value. And so at this point in the presentation, I can click on, I'm going to hit some of these opinions and give you examples from our topic. So this slide just applies to any topic we would tackle. But now when I click the gray, we're going to look into what this group thought. So for instance, let me start with assumptions actually. So in the category of assumptions, which your assumptions would make up your case for action, like why are we doing this? You could look at the current performance of our region's communications about the future ready career. There was 100% alignment about the lack of awareness about future ready careers. Also in assumptions, I could just do one more in assumptions because that is a good place to start. Internal drivers. We were aligned as a group on the assumptions related to internal drivers. So what's an example of that? So our group was highly supportive and endorsed the view that many adults need to remodel their worldview about what is possible for themselves. That was unanimous, if I recall correctly. Almost everyone agreed with that, which those are 2 different things I recognize, but it's really strong endorsement for that. A weaker example of an opinion, an example of where we're not aligned as a group, is the opinion that many top tech graduates of our universities now go elsewhere to work. So it doesn't mean that everyone rejected that opinion. It just means that in our group, some people endorsed that opinion, some people rejected that opinion, and so that affected its alignment. We're not aligned on that opinion. So let's take a look at goals. In the external value about why we would be, how to do this, we are also aligned, right? The target audience should see future ready as a constant effort, not a fixed goal. We had really strong alignment in our group about that opinion. We had weaker alignment in our group about the opinion we should not target affluent students. So that's maybe somewhere where we have to put it into our next phase, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's just look at one of the barriers while we're here. The inability to plan, so constraints to success, and this is true for any project. We can't plan, we can't execute, we can't sustain the effort. There's too many negative side effects. So let's click on one of these. I lost my cursor, there it is. Let's say inability to execute. So here's an, that's not right. Let's see, inability to plan. So we had no alignment. We didn't have an example of an endorsed opinion in this category. So we had weak alignment. We were divergent in this area. And an example of how we know this is that when we put the opinion, companies may not share their talent strategies because those talent strategies are differentiators for the companies, may be seen as proprietary. So that was not, we were not aligned on that opinion. Some people rejected that opinion. Some people in our group embraced that opinion and endorsed it. So I think you get the idea here. And we're going to move on to, so this is a little peek of the science, and we can look at the software itself in a second. So we're finished with that slide, but let's look at a color visualization of our alignment. You can see each of these blue dots is an opinion, one of these many opinions that were expressed, regardless of what category. So when you look at the current state, the categories of opinion with the current state, the change drivers, and the core principles, we have very strong alignment. So overall, the large triangle, let me start at the beginning. The large triangle is our overall alignment. And then these smaller triangles are the categories. So when you look at the current state and the change drivers and the core principles, we're very aligned because most of the blue dots are in the green top right hand of the triangle. Proposed actions about what, how, and who we should meet our goals, fairly aligned, not as aligned as this triangle here, but still aligned. And then 3-year outcomes, indicators of success, you know, this so-called North Star of what does success look like, pretty aligned and clear. Maybe just one or two opinions we have to figure out why there was misalignment there. And then lastly, perhaps you could see in the triangle here, the most work that we have to do is in the perceived constraints, barriers, and negative side effects. So this is incredible that we are starting out as a group, you know, 78 people, 45 of them highly engaged, and, you know, lots of participants were, you know, the feedback, everything, highly engaged group, that we are starting out at a really great place. So now it's time to look at the sequencing. It's called outside-in sequencing, which is there's a whole, you know, there's a whole commitment to this concept. It was by an author whose name is escaping me, but essentially it says like the sequence is important, that you have to establish the stakeholder value. You have to have value yourselves for doing this project. So just take a minute and, you know, think about the outside-in sequencing is basically a theory that says you have to think about the client first, the target audience first, like what is the value to them about this? And each of these categories, all of the opinions fall into one of these categories, and that helps us understand where to begin our discussions so that we can get to stronger alignment. Next slide. Okay, so here's our score. This is our group score for outside-in sequencing. The colors of yellow, orange, green, and red, that represents the level of alignment in our group, the alignment index. And the brown and blue represent the sentiment index. The darker brown means you've endorsed that this set of opinions was endorsed by the group. And then if it's dark blue, it means the sentiment of that group of opinions was rejected by the group. So you can be aligned on something because everyone rejected it. We don't have any of those results in our data set. In our data, we don't have any green boxes that are dark blue. We don't have any, and none of the opinions were universally rejected. We had quite a few opinions that were universally embraced, meaning that everyone in the group was aligned around endorsing an opinion. Those are called Schelling points. We had, I believe, 14 of them. So the external value, just looking at this content, it kind of gives us a map for the next set of conversations that we have to have, and in what sequence. And then this is like a subset. Let me just back up a second. So the next slide is going to break out the external value, the group of opinions that represented external value, but specific for this type of topic, which is a communications program. So the external value to the region, the target audience, strategic purpose, schools and colleges, employers. So the set, all of these opinions here that were scored, and you can see their scores, they show not only about our sentiment related to the external value and our alignment, but also specifically gives us guidance about maybe who should be in the next set of conversations. And so if you notice, schools and colleges, well, employers, all right, well, there's some opinions there where we didn't have really strong alignment. And the goal with alignment is 85 or above, and the goal with sentiment is 45 or above. So those are sort of the thresholds that the Schelling point science tells us will get us to our goals that are the most valuable, most viable, most endorsed. Another interesting insight from the data is that the founding members and advisory board members of this group have exceptional alignment. So of all the, Schelling point has, a data library of 139 executive teams that were measured for their alignment. And in our group, we're in this little yellow dot right here. You could see we have really strong alignment from our leadership group, founding members and advisory board members, which I think is great news. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at, let me check the chat. Is there anything that you would like to dive deeper into, some questions? We can go to the software and do that. So let me get to that place. Okay, so hopefully you can still see my screen. Now, because I have Future Works Alliance is, using Schelling point, we have access to the data on the back end. So this is our topic, as you can see, and I'm managing this alignment cycle. So all those emails that you got, they came from me because of this software very easily. And there's a whole, set of behind the scenes things, but this section right here, we can actually break it down and say, oh, okay, let's look at some of the opinions that formed the subset of case for action. That's a great place to start, because if we don't agree on why we're doing this, it might be a problem. So we can look at the categories of the case for action, current performance, internal drivers. And when I click on this, you could see all the opinions. Well, this first one doesn't have that many opinions, but look at this second group, the internal drivers for the case for action. Many adults need to remodel. That was in the PowerPoint. And when you hover over it, you could see what each subset of participants, what they thought about this. So we had really great agreement on that one. Let's look at one where we didn't have agreement. Okay, we didn't have agreement, and we know exactly what type of participant thinks what about this. Interestingly, the research pros were adamantly rejecting this opinion. So here's an example of a green box and a blue box, very aligned subset of our participants. The research pros rejected wholeheartedly. They all rejected this opinion. You know, maybe they know something we don't know. And then the last step, step 3, we sent out, you know, give us your reasons why you disagree with this. And so here we have anonymously and privately people's deeper thinking about why did they disagree with this? Well, they had a lot to say about that. This is so useful. This is amazing. First of all, that people were not only interested, but interested enough to do the work and be engaged and take the time to tell us what they thought. This is great. So this last step 3 gave us information to start on the next step 3. So we may or may not decide, however, to dive into that opinion. So let's look at a different one. I'll go back to the case for action. I'll set it to the means and ends. How are we going to do this? And the ideas that we got from this group about how to do this, it was just wonderful. So let's say the value generators. Okay, all the opinions that fell into this category, look at all these opinions that people had. So an example of a very aligned opinion is that the communications program should be culturally competent. Everyone agreed with that. That's a Schelling point. If we go down to the bottom, these are obviously reported in order of alignment. You go down to the bottom, you can see, all right, here's something not everybody did agree on. We would create a unique e-course about career management skills. Okay, well, let's see who agreed and disagreed. So you can see in the hover box who disagreed with that, you know, just the categories of participants and to what level. And then if you click on this, people told us why they disagree with that. So sometimes people disagree with something because they didn't like, you know, that they interpreted it differently, or they know something about data that we don't know. But even though I want to point out, I'm going to shut this for a second. I want to point out on that opinion about the e-course, we had a sentiment of endorsing that opinion. So it was low. It was only 19. It wasn't 45 where we like it, but it was divergent, right? Meaning that we weren't aligned because our 63 score, that's pretty far from 85. So we slightly agreed with this, but there was a lot of different opinions. So that might be something that we could dive into in the next step. So it remains to be seen. I want to carefully say that the next step doesn't have to be, we don't have to address all of these opinions that have weak alignment. That's something to be determined by the core team who, well, I'll talk about in the next slide. Let me go back to my presentation. Is there anyone who would like me to look at different parts of the data? Because we're almost a Q&A, and I can certainly go back to the data.
And
yes.
Karen was asking she would love to see examples of the 3-year visions, and on the screen that you're on there, actually,
okay,
the top tier there, the external value, that external value one, that combines, Karen, both the external value is both who should be receiving value. So you'll see statements about we should target these people, and it also has, and this is how they should be experiencing value from this comms program. So those are the elements of a 3-year vision. I'll let Anne describe some of them.
Okay, yeah, great. So thanks, Michael, for pointing that out. I missed that in the chat. Thank you.
All right.
So yeah, this is some of the long-term, you know, external value of metrics of success, if you will. And if you notice, we have a deep section of opinions that are above 85. So, you know, the question is, so there's not lack of agreement about things that we should be trying to do. And I'll just stop talking, get a drink of water. You could read through some of those opinions. And
what I would say, Anne, while you have a drink of water, is if Karen, if Karen, and obviously everybody else, but if you look at the statements, so as you work down, the fifth one down, there should be increased diversity in future ready careers. Okay, what we need to clarify, what does that mean? Even employed people should be considering new possibilities. Employees should see a real path from current skills to experience new higher paying roles. And then as you get further down, you'll notice towards the bottom, the shame associated with being unemployed should be lifted. We should see a measurable and efficient talent supply chain. So all of those statements there are examples of outcome statements that would be part of an overall vision for what the program's trying to achieve. If that makes sense, Karen.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else care to see any particular section of opinions expressed or data on any section of the software in the back end? Okay. Sorry for the home saver here. Here we go. Okay, so what is the next step here? The next step is that we prioritize non-alignment, as I mentioned before. So we now have the data that shows us exactly where are we on where do we have weak alignment, and then also figuring out exactly confirming the case for with confirming the case for action in mind. And so the next step involves the assembly of about a 5-person core team. The core team for this cycle will come from the founding member group and some early adopters who were supportive of the Future Works Alliance, but with a commitment to some, of course, diversity of perspective, and also some expertise on communications generally. So we're going to identify which opinions there's still strong misalignment on them, and try to get the group work until the group is agreed on the most important areas of alignment. And so when we come back, you may get another short list of opinions that may say, hey, the core team has decided to seek alignment, stronger alignment on these 5 opinions. And could you tell us, more about what you think of this particular, set of opinions? So that's up and coming. And of course, the more you think about this and the more you understand, what the case for action is, and what the North Star metrics are, that I think it will be even more easy to form, really cogent opinions moving forward. And then I just want to remind everyone that this is strategic collaboration. And the success is, a project plan that you can execute on, that, dozens of people have weighed in on. That's the ultimate result of this, that the Future Works Alliance wants to produce. We want to produce a viable, valuable, and endorsed project plan that will create a communications program, 24-month communications program about future ready careers. So I'm going to open it up for question and answer. If you'd like to ask any questions or review any, go back to any slides, I'll leave the presentation. I can easily bring the presentation back up, but I would welcome anyone to join on screen if you have a question, or if you, wanted to put it in the chat, whichever way would be great. hope I haven't bored everyone to tears, but feel free to, comments. It doesn't have to be a question. You can happily comment on anything or comment on the experience that you had with the content or the software. But I just wanted to say that I'm personally very excited about the results that came out of this process so far. I'm very encouraged about the ability to actually have a communications program that will help real people in a time of rapid technological change. And this process, no matter how, you have no obligation to remain engaged, but of course we want you to remain engaged, and there will be a final project produced with, constraints removed and weak alignment resolved. There will be, this will only be getting stronger and stronger. This is great news that I'm sharing today, and I just wanted to say I'm really excited about it. Yeah, someone raised their hand. Let me see.
Hi, Ann, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Who is it?
It's Karen again.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. I had a question about why we start with non-alignment. I guess in my mind, I figure that we start with where we are aligned and maybe produce a plan and some action steps that will produce our collective desired goals while we reconcile those things that are out of alignment. But why would we, explain to me the methodology of starting with non-alignment?
I love this question because this is exactly the question I had months ago when I first started learning about this. So this is perfect. The reason why you don't start with the things that are aligned is because inevitably the areas of misalignment are going to come back to bite you. So I'm trying to get to the slide with, this doesn't do backwards very well, but these colored boxes.
And the outside in slide would be the best place to talk to it.
Oh, okay.
In terms of how working outside in, we start off with, to who should this program bring value? What should that value be? Here's where we are aligned. Good. Here's where we're not. And out of the parts where we're not, which are the ones do we need to turn we don't agree into we do agree? So you're simultaneously dealing with alignment and non-alignment, but you're working outside in. You're picking a part of the conversation and then a next part and a next part. So it's not just simply one or the other. It's based upon the themes of the subject. And the outside in slide that you have with all of the pyramid and then the operating theme. So
I'm trying to get Zoom. I lost Zoom. Hold on. I know you guys could see me and I can't find you.
It's all right. So Karen, that's the answer. What we're doing is, whereas in groups don't normally explicitly discuss where they are and aren't aligned. So what we're doing is, where we are it's not about people. It's not about you and I aren't aligned. It's about looking at opinions. So if you can go to the next slide, Anne, please. It's about taking, then the next one. So it's about saying, okay, before we dive off and start talking about communications content, communications mechanisms, communications style, all those very tactical, this is how we should do it. The first thing we have to agree with is externally who we're going to bring value to and what that value is going to be. And so what you're doing there is you're starting and you say, right, let's start with who's the target audience? Where is it in terms of the target audience? We can say, right, we're all aligned about who that should be. Now, you still have to ask the question, just because we're all aligned, is it still the right thing? But then you can say, right, good. Then you can take the areas around target audience where you say, well, some think the target audience should be this and others think it should be this. And let's turn those into what we do agree to. So does that make sense, Karen? That's how we're processing alignment and non-alignment.
I'm actually still in need of some clarity. So can you explain to me the trajectory of, a successful line where, so I agree that the areas where there's misalignment, need to be addressed, but I guess I'm still not certain what the trajectory of a successful plan looks like if we move forward where we are aligned while we, reconcile where we're not aligned.
Yeah.
Versus getting aligned altogether.
Well, we're not, there's no moving forward. Let's be clear. If you mean moving forward is doing things, there's no doing things. The output of the process is a roadmap of what needs to be done. Getting to the road, it depends what you mean by moving forward, Karen.
Well, can I just add that, Karen, I totally understand where you're coming from. And a lot of the coalitions I participated in did exactly that. And then they ended up failing, losing energy, losing momentum, taking twice as much time, costing 3 times as much. And so I think that what you're expressing is a common habit and a natural inclination. Like, let's just start where we agree. Okay. And so that natural inclination, the science tells us that if you give in to that natural inclination, things will just be less valuable because you haven't aired everyone out, and they'll be less endorsed, and they'll take longer, and they'll cost more money. And so, and drain people. Most importantly, in the public sector, what I've experienced is that this fatigue and malaise sets in when you continue to do things in a way that take longer, that aren't aligned from the start, not clear from the start who stands where or who's going to benefit from this. I can't tell you how many working groups and projects I've been involved in where at the end of it, we were no better than where we started, and everyone had a terrible taste in their mouth about collaboration because they didn't do the hard work in the beginning of vetting out all the friction points and vetting out all the things that could go wrong. There's a lot of, and I think we've all been in work meetings where nobody wants to ruffle feathers. You just want a Pollyanna. Oh, this will work. It's like toxic cheerleading, right? I coined that. I don't know if I made that up or if that's like a thing, but the toxic positivity of like, we can do this. It's like, really, can we do it? Don't we have to have a few more like substantive conversations about this? So, to your point, I get it. I've been there, and plenty of things can go okay just as well. This science and the data that Shelling Point has in these hundreds of, documenting hundreds of collaborations shows us like it's a better way to do it. I hope that answered your question.
It does. I feel like the value that you might be communicating, and maybe it's just an inferred value that I'm picking up on, is that you're setting the tone from the get-go of having civil discourse around where we're misaligned, so that sets the tone for the rest of the process. Is that correct?
Exactly. Like if you're, it's so valuable to have the naysayers and, the people who are going to work against you because they're not on board. And I don't want to make this sound personal. Whole organizations could work against the success of any given project, right? So to have that aired out in the beginning and clarified and getting everybody to a place that they can say, all right, I'm prepared to take action. I'm prepared to invest time and energy and expertise into the success of this project because I was heard early on. So I think there's a lot of science behind this that Shelling Point has, and also a lot of, just recognizing human nature a little bit more as well.
And Karen, I think something you might appreciate, Anne mentions the science. So this does come from a research project that continues. The reason we work with the business schools in the US and the UK is we have hundreds of transformations and changes and business initiatives studied. And so let me give you a statistic. We now know from hundreds of projects that when you put a group of people together, whether it's 5 people in an office or 50 people or 500 people, when you pull them together and say, what do you each think about this subject? Why should you do it or not do it? What does success look like? What should you do to create those outcomes? Why won't it work? We now know statistically that when somebody says something, when I say, well, I think this, everybody else agrees with me 17% of the time. And we now know that some people disagree and some agree 83% of the time. In conventional meetings, when we get into workshops and we get into retreats and off-site retreats and flip charts, what we now know is the 17% where we all aligned or all like-minded is what gets talked about because it's comfortable.
Right, but it's 17% is not going to get the job done, right?
And and of the 83%, about 10 to 15% of the let's hash this out gets talked about. All the rest of it comes out during implementation, which is Anne's point about what is so part of what you see going on, Karen, here is exactly what we've learned methodology wise is bring it all out as much as possible at the beginning, and help the group in a productive manner reconcile non-like-mindedness.
Right, and in a structured way. Karen, I can't thank you enough for that question. It was really awesome to have that. You kind of showed like, you know, you were, that's great. Like, thank you so much. I didn't even bribe her. I assure everyone on the call, she came up with that question perfectly. It's a great setup. And we have a couple of other questions. I see that Paul, thank you for your question. Can we access this information to dig deeper? I'm sharing the highlights now, but the software, you know, is the Future Works Alliance, you know, has access as the managing consultant to all of the data. So can you go in and flip around like I just did in this PowerPoint? No, you can't do that. But you know, we are, you know, being transparent about a lot of the highlights and, you know, trying to explain where we're going next. And it's not the last that you'll hear from it. Michael, do you want to add something?
Well, yeah, just one thing for Paul and everybody else is that after the meeting today, there's going to be a personalized report sent to everybody. So you'll each receive an email and there'll be a link in the email and it will take you to a secure private listing of every one of the opinions that was expressed with a bar graph of the agree to disagrees with an indicator of where you were. So you'll be able to say, here's where everybody agreed and I'm part of that. Here's where half agreed, half disagreed, and I'm in that set. And here's where most people agreed and I disagree and they're all wrong. So you will get a listing of all the opinions with the overall bar graphs and your comparison with them. So you will have that information. Okay.
Yeah, Dusty, did you want to come on and ask your question? Paul, I'm sorry, I didn't give you that option, but do you want to come on screen and ask about the project plan timeline?
No, I do want to, I'm wondering about the timeline for all of this. That would be really helpful, I think, for me to understand.
Yep, great question. So it's interesting, the timeline can be as short or as long as you want. It's really about, you know, how quickly people respond and the data. So I mapped this out. Michael and I worked together to map this out to be about a 7-week length because it was in part because of it was the first time that the Future Works Alliance was operating the Shelling Point alignment cycle. So my goal is to have a project plan before June 30th, and it may be sooner is what I'm thinking, given, but Michael, did you want to speak to that a little bit?
There are, only to sort of just say, there are 4 stages in terms of what Anne was showing. So there's 4 stages to arrive at a scorecard of success and a roadmap of actions to produce those outcomes. And those 4 stages, as Anne said, they can be run they can be run over the course of a day or 2. They can be run over 1 a week, 1 every 2 weeks. And with a group such as this, because we can't all pull everybody into a session, that's why it's probably going to be realistically, just to respect people's time to turn around and provide input, probably it's going to be about 4 to 6 weeks, something along those lines.
Michael, you think 4 to 6 longer weeks? I think, is that what you're saying?
Well,
4 to 6 weeks additional on top of what we just completed?
Again, it's really how much. I mean,
yeah,
you and I haven't discussed it in detail. If you said we want to do it in 2 weeks and each of the steps be done in a 3-day cycle, or we want to give everybody a week to provide their inputs and give them make it 4 weeks, it's really up to you and the group. Yeah.
So the next immediate steps is the identifying the core team, which the Future Works Alliance is committed to transparency. Of course, we will let the whole group of highly engaged folks know who the core team is. That's going to dive into identifying non-alignment, and most of what's going forward will be published on the Future Works Alliance website. I would be remiss if I didn't mention now that we're doing another, the Future Works Alliance is doing kind of queuing up for the next strategic alignment by organizing an event called Got Tech, and it's May 26th. It's all about tech trainers. We're going to allow technology training entities from our region talk about the work that they do and, the results that they get for the people that take the time to acquire tech skills. And that will generate a topic related to technology skills and technology talent pipeline in our region. So the idea here, big picture, is that the Future Works Alliance will lead these strategic alignment cycles to create the Future of Work playbook. Is it easy? No. Is it going to take some time? Yes. Is it worthwhile? I really believe so. I believe so with all my being, that we need to get working on this. And so that's kind of the idea, big picture, is that the future, I just wanted to say that the Future Works Alliance work doesn't stop and start with a communications program. I really think of this alignment cycle as chapter 2 of the Future Work Playbook. The first chapter was creating the Future Works Alliance, creating the space for people to come and choose different topics to be engaged in. So keep an eye on our website, keep an eye on things that are coming up, open emails, and check in with us on social media. We're at Future Works PHL on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. So we'll be operating these alignment cycles over the next several months and years until there's greater awareness throughout the region about what we need to do to really thrive through an era of rapid technological change. I don't see any more questions or comments in the chat, but I will hang back for anyone that is interested in talking more about this. But I wanted to thank everyone for your time today, and really wish you a good rest of the week, and encourage you to, you can register for the tech training event. If you or anyone Allison from Slicer Media, Allison Berto, just dropped the registration link in the chat if you're interested in popping that event on your calendar or telling others about it. So thanks again. I appreciate your time, and we will be signing off shortly. Thanks, Michael, too. And thanks, Allison from Slicer Media. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today.
Yeah, all the best, everybody. Take care, Anne. Thanks, Alison.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.